on At the Races quite recently, there was a debate from the Corral representative Simon Clare and Kevin Blake, who's a very well-known figure, just about where bookmaking is at the moment. And the likes of yourself, Adrian, and the vast majority of people watching and listening in this morning will not know that bookmakers are apt to do some extremely, questionable things in terms of closing down accounts, while at the same time accommodating people who are quite obviously problem gamblers.
You've spoken to a couple of bookmakers on this topic. That's the essence of the piece here today.
So 2 weeks ago, Brian Kavanagh, who's head of HRI, he called for an overhaul of gambling regulation in Ireland. And when he's calling for an overhaul, there basically is none. They can do whatever they want. In effect, there's certainly been money laundering going on in lots of shops now. There's an EU directive coming in to stop that. But they basically can do what they want. And, they're in the business of making money, so they'll try to make money in a true capitalist way. But Brian Kavanagh, endorsed the idea of having to lay a minimum bet of €1,000 liability, for example, on Irish racing. Which I think is laudable.
What does that? Will you tell us what that means for the layman's language?
Sure. So Paddy Power speaks in that piece today about the average stake is about 20 quid, and I've no reason to believe that's wrong. There are others who will bet heavier. 50 quid at 20 to 1 equates to €1,000 liability. So what I would be asking, Kevin Blake has said the same thing. This is something that's been kind of pioneered and successful in New South Wales and Australia, albeit a slightly different model over there. If I go into Paddy Power shop this morning, they are entitled and obliged to lay me a liability of €1,000 win only on a horse race. So if the horse is even money, they're obliged to lay me at least €1,000. If the horse is 6 to 1, they're obliged to lay me €166.
So is the point that they can't refuse your bet? Is that the...
Yeah, or at least up to €1,000.
Yeah.
In order to get a license in this country. Because
and at the minute they can pick and choose that they can do business with you or not do business with you.
I had a friend who was in Cheltenham last weekend for the racing that was going on, and of course, being a punter, he wanted to bet on the rugby, whoever was playing some game in England on the Saturday night. He went into a bookmaker. I'm not even sure what bookmaker it was. He asked for X amount on the handicap on the spread. He waited 10 minutes as they made a phone call to head office to be told he could have €130 at a much shorter price, and then they slashed the handicap. So they used him as a means of information, but didn't lay him a bet.
Right.
And that's par for the course now. And accounts are being opened and closed, with such regularity now. And again, James Knight of Ladbrokes Corral alludes to this. It's hard to police accounts, and there's a famous case going on in Northern Ireland at the moment where a girl called Megan McCann placed these bets, and Bet365 are arguing that they weren't her bets, and under their terms and conditions they're thus null and void, and I think the case has involved 7 figures. But bookmakers can basically get away with what they want, and to a degree they will argue that we're a business and actually we can sort of dictate the terms and conditions of our own business because we are a business and we're in business to make money. That's the essence of the thing, and they generally tend to make quite a bit of money, obviously. Sure.
But I suppose their argument would be, and you can tell me if this isn't the case, that we're a business and actually we can rightfully, like any business can say, well, we choose to do business with you or not. So what you're talking about is a situation where, again, bring clarity to this if I'm not right, but that the HRI or people are looking to lobby the government to step in and say, to put legislation in place where they don't get to have that sort of control.
Gambling is a colossal problem, and if you watch the Ashes the other night, every single ad was led by a gambling ad. And I remember reading recently of a guy who'd had serious gambling issues, and it's basically like being an alcoholic and you're always in the bar if you're watching TV and you're watching sport now. So it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. I've reservations about that, and I've massive reservations about a bookmaker bringing a guy who clearly has a problem to places like Old Trafford, bringing them on all these junkets, laying hundreds of thousands of euro to a guy, and not laying a guy who's betting completely honestly and is doing nothing untoward, who's having his 50 quid each way, and within a week of opening an account he's closed down. You can't have it both ways. These bookmakers
closed down because he's making too much money.
Because he's not even making much money, but they just think they can't get an edge off him. And I would argue that they can use the intelligent punter to actually say, well, if he's consistently backing winners, okay, if he wants to back 50 quid at 8 to 1, we can cut that horse into 6 to 1, and it's actually going to save us money. They don't need to be afraid of laying bets, but I would certainly think there needs to be some legislation to stop what's going on, because at the moment, you know, there are so many friends of mine who just cannot get bets on, and it's infuriating.
So on that point, do we have, I mean, I think I might know the answer to this, but do we have any numbers of idea of the scale of this thing?
Yeah, so Paddy Power says 99.99% of people are fine today. I think that's an exaggeration now. I think it's not quite as high as that. I think 2 or 3% of punters make money, but they should be accommodated. Bet365 are making their turnover is something like 2 billion last year. 3/4 of their bets are in play. Now that means it's a live event. That is dictated by models, and I'm not talking about like the girls in the magazines. I'm talking about models that basically mean you don't have to have human intervention. If Liverpool are playing tomorrow, they will know at all times what the odds should be for the next corner, what the score should be at half time, next goal score, full time.
So it's a very profitable thing.
Very profitable, and you know, in a wider sense here, it's part of the global shift towards, you know, computers and machines, and where will humans actually fit in the scheme of things in the long term. And bookmakers now are like that, and this goes to the odds compilers as well that price up horse races. They are giving them less and less kind of, you know, of a role and less relevance, because they don't really want to have an opinion. They just want to have as few people as possible and as many models as possible doing their job. And basically, so it's a true capitalist mindset. But at the same time, I'm very worried about where racing is going, because there doesn't seem to be an opinion from bookmakers anymore. It's like one bookmaker will price up a race, everyone will follow, and if one of them is wrong, it's the blind leading the blind. And I've been accused by one bookmaker of backing horses that are always live, in other words, that they've been laid out for something. I'm only backing them because their price is wrong, and their price is wrong because their odds compilers are not doing their job. You know, and as a punter who's, I'm a very honest punter, in fairness, and I don't really bet on information, I bet on form. I find that infuriating. I'm just trying to bet and I'm trying to promote the sport, and I won't promote the sport indefinitely if bookmakers are going to just purge accounts willy-nilly. Yeah,
and racing is the biggest, in terms of the gambling industry in Ireland, it's far and away the biggest area that people gamble on as well, obviously.
It's changing though, Adrian, you know, racing's becoming a smaller part of the cake, you know, and when back in the day when you went into the dingy bookie shop, you know, full of smoke, everyone was betting on horse racing, and betting on sport was a small thing, you know. But like, people now wake up in the middle of the night and bet on their phone, and they can bet live and running on some game in, you know, Dubai or whatever. Racing is definitely becoming smaller, but at the same time, like, the amount of people I know who I never thought had any interest in racing, who love betting on racing as well. And this is part of the overall narrative. Betting is just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and I should definitely think it should be policed.
Yeah, well, I mean, and numbers from a report that I read about 40,000 Irish people who have gambling issues, and that isn't what you're talking about, but I mean in that context too, in terms of the advertising.
And that is the real story. You look at, you know, Davy Glennon, the Galway hurler, you look at Oisin McConville, Niall McNamee, and these are just three names, you know. Most of the people won't admit it, you know, and people who have a gambling problem, if you're down €5,000, you know, 10,000 means no more really. It's the same thing, because your body has just, you've lost control, completely lost control. And gambling is a massive, massive issue, and because online doesn't require the actual interchange of hard cash, it's just a figure at the end of the screen.
Monopoly money.
Monopoly money. And you know the old famous story about the wife told the husband to go to the shop to get bread. He came back, he lost all their money, and he never got the bread. That rings true.
All right, well, you can read much more of that story on from Johnny's piece there on the back page of the Times Ireland edition.